Hi there, this is Weblan. Welcome back. We want to look at grade 10 finance, and I have 6 questions with me here. And with the 6 questions, I'll try to explain the basics of finance, everything that need to be covered. And with those basics, you'll be fully armed to go and deal with questions in finance. Of course, the basics will not think for you. So when you have a question, you need to use your basics and attack the question. All right, let's look at the questions. The first one is simple interest. The first concept is simple interest. The question is saying an amount of 12,000 Rand was invested in a savings account for 4 years at an interest rate of 6% per annum. Simple interest. Determine the value of the investment after 4 years. The formula of calculating simple interest there is A is equal to P multiplied by 1 plus your interest rate multiplied by the number of years, where your A is your final amount, that is investment after the 4 years. Your P is the initial value or the principal amount. Now let's substitute there. Your A is equal to, your P is 12,000 Rand, the amount that was invested, that is 12,000 Rand, multiplied by the bracket of 1 plus your I is your interest rate, that is 6% or 6 over 100, and I'm writing it as a decimal, 0.06 multiplied by your N is the number of years, that is multiplied by 4. And this should give you 13,920. So your interest here is equal to the final amount minus the initial amount, that is the principal, that is 13,920 minus 12,000 Rand. And then this should give you an amount of 1,920. So this investment has given an interest of 1,920 Rand. That's how we deal with simple interest. Of course, the questions come in very different ways, but these basics should be able to, should be able to open your eyes. The second question, 11,000 Rand was invested in a savings account at an interest rate of 9% per annum compound interest. Determine the value of the investment after 6 years. So our formula there for compound interest, it is your final amount is equal to the principal multiplied by the bracket of 1 plus your interest, all raised to the power of n, where your n is the number of years. And then when you are answering these questions, make sure you list what you have. What we have here, the first one, 11, that is your P is 11,000 Rand, and then your I is 9%, which is equal to 0.09, and then your N is 6 years, but your A is not given. So we use the compound formula to determine the value of A. So we are saying here, your A is equal to, substitute P is 11,000 multiplied by 1 plus your I is 0.09. Remember, percent you divide by 100 plus 0.09, and then raised to the power of n, that is 6 years. And then on your calculator there, it should give you 18,448.10. That's how much we have. And then if you are to determine the amount of interest that was earned here, your interest is equal to the final amount minus the initial amount. Just like we did here, we say I is equal to A minus P. So your A is 18,448.10 minus the initial amount, that is 11,000, and this should give you an amount of 7,448.10. So in these 6 years, this investment has earned 7,448 rand 10 cents. And then the third question, a Samsung J5 cell phone has a cash price of 4,500 rand. Cash price of 4,500. Determine the monthly installment if it is sold on a hire purchase agreement which charges 7% per annum for 2 years with a deposit of 10%. Now, hire purchase is the method that is used when someone does not have enough money to buy something cash. So they are saying if you have enough money, you can take this cell phone and pay 4,500 rand now. But if you do not have 5,500 rand now, you can just pay a deposit of 10%. That is, you pay 10% of 4,500 rand now. And then the balance, we are going to take it as a loan, right? So we know a loan, we can calculate interest on a loan, and hire purchase. When you deal with hire purchase, you should remember it's simple interest. So we are going to charge the interest using this simple interest formula. Let's determine that. Determine the deposit. So we are saying your deposit is 10% of 4,500. 10% of 4,500. What do we get there? It's 450 rand. 450 rand. Ne? And then your balance we are now saying is equal to 4,500 minus 450 rand. And this gives you 4,050. Or if you did not want to use this method, you just want to go straight and calculate the balance, you could have said balance is equal to, remember 10% is the deposit. When you have paid 10%, you are left with 90%. So you could say 90% multiplied by 4,500. Then it gives you 4,050. So 450 rand is 10% and 4,050 is 90%. Now this 90% is the balance which you are going to pay in installments. So we use simple interest to determine the interest for that. Let's calculate the interest. Your interest there, we are using simple interest, so we are saying A is equal to P multiplied by 1 plus I times N, right? And this is equal to, the balance is the one that you take as your P, so that is 4,050 50 multiplied by 1 plus your I for the simple for the hire purchase, it's 7% per annum, so plus 0.07 multiplied by, it says for 2 years, so that is multiplied by 2 years. So the whole amount that you are going to be owing here is 4,617, right? So you have paid 10% deposit and you are left with a balance of 4,050 rand. Now they charge you interest on that balance because you're not going to pay it cash, but you're paying it in installments. Now the total amount that you pay, including interest without including the deposit, it's 4,617, right? Now this amount is going to be paid in 2 years time. To determine the installment will be equal to 4,617 divide by, our installment is payment per month, every month. And how many months do we have in 2 years? We have 24 months. So we divide that amount by 24, and this gives us an amount of 192 rand 38 cents. That's how much you are going to pay per month if you agree to use the hire purchase agreement. And then in total, how much would you have paid including the deposit, right? Your total there will be this amount that is including interest, that is 4,617 plus your deposit. You paid deposit, remember, that is 450, and then you get the total amount that you'll be paying. And this is hire purchase. Let's look at the fourth concept, that is question number 4. The fourth concept, question number 4, we are still looking at that Samsung cell phone. The cost of the cell phone is subject to inflation and increases annually at a rate of 3% per annum. Determine the price of the cell phone after 3 years. Remember, inflation is the increase of price, the continuous increase of price, right, over time. So we are given that the increase here is happening at a rate of 3% per annum. How do we calculate the price of the cell phone in 3 years' time? Just remember, because of inflation, if you pay for that cell phone, if you pay 4,500 rand today for that cell phone and come back 3 years after today, it's going to be more. The prices would have gone up, and 4,500 would have lost value so much that it will not be able to buy the same things that it was buying 3 years ago. That is inflation. Now, inflation uses compound interest. Just like we remember in the previous question, hire purchase uses simple interest. Inflation uses compound interest formula. So the price after 3 years, the price there after 3 years would be equal to, our P would be the initial price, that is the price now, 4,500 multiplied by the bracket of 1 plus our I is the interest rate, 3%, that is 3 over 100, which I want to write as 0.03. And then to the power of n, your n is 3 years. So that is to the power of 3. So how much will this cell phone cost after 3 years? This cell phone will be going for 4,917 and 27 cents. That is inflation, right? So it has increased from 4,500 to 4,917 rand 20 cents in 3 years. That is inflation. And then question number 5. We are looking at exchange rates. Remember, exchange rates, we are comparing currencies, South African currency, comparing it with currencies from other countries. And the question is saying, the same Samsung J5 is sold for $200 in the USA. In USA, they use dollars. So in USA, the same cell phone is going for 200 rand. If the exchange rate is at $1 is equivalent to 17 rand 80 cents. Determine whether the cell phone is cheaper in South Africa or in USA. So we need to establish the price of this cell phone in USA according to South African rand. So there's 2 ways we can do it. We can convert $200 to South African rand, or we can convert the 4,500 rand that we are paying here in South Africa, we convert it to US dollars. Let's start with this one. We are saying $1 is equivalent to 17 rand 80 cents, right? And then in USA, this cell phone is going for 200 rand. This 200 rand is equivalent to how many South African rand? Let's put it here. That's 200 is equivalent to something that we do not know yet. Now, for this one, we can use cross multiplication there, right? So this is going to be x multiplied by 1, then x, and then 200 multiplied by this. 200 multiplied by 1780. 200 multiplied by 1780, that is going to be equal to 3,560. So we are saying they are selling it for $200 in USA. If you convert that 200 to South African rand, is 3,560. And when you are buying it in South Africa, it's 4,500. But in USA, it's costing 3,560. So that tells us that this cell phone is cheaper in the USA. Oh, this is 1 is to 17 rand 80. This is our exchange rate. So we can convert our 4,500. 4,500. This 4,500 is equivalent to how many US dollars? Cross multiplication once again. Multiplied by 1, we have 4,500 is equal to x multiplied by 1780. That's 1780x. And then divide both sides by 1780. This side, they cancel each other, so your 4,500 rand will be equal to 4,500 over 1780. And what do we get there? 276 rand, not rand, $276.25. So we are saying 4,500 rand is equivalent to $276.25. So that still tells us that the price of this phone in South Africa is much higher than the price of the phone in the USA. These are exchange rates. And then finally, we get to the last question, population growth. Now, population growth, we say population grows exponentially, especially in the early ages of early years of population growth. It follows the exponential model, right? And the formula that we use for population growth is 1 plus I to the power of n. So it follows the compound interest formula. But now population growth is different from the other concepts that we dealt with, because it only does this in the early ages or in the early years. But later on, it's affected by different concepts like the availability of food or resources. So when population is growing, we are going to have more people. And when we have more people, we might not have enough food to feed these people. So people decide, no, let's stop multiplying. You see, things like that. So this formula only applies in the early ages of population growth. So the question is saying the population in South Africa in January 2008 was 48,900,000. Calculate the size of the population in 3 years' time if the average population growth was 1.3% per annum, and we use the compound interest formula. This is going to be equal to, your P is the population in 2008, that is 48,900,000. And then 1 plus our I is the interest, 1,3 over 100, that is 0,013. And then it is saying in 3 years' time. So our n is equal to 3. And then if we do that, how many people are we going to have in South Africa after 3 years? That is going to be 50,831,999,7. But we are talking about population. So population cannot have 7. So we have to round it off to the nearest whole number. That will be 50,832,000 people. That is population growth. And that concludes our finance for grade 10. These were just the basics, but go back and practice. Answer the questions in your textbook. Look at questions in past exam papers. Try to answer as many questions as possible. Remember, practice makes perfect. So the more questions you answer, the more practice, the closer you come to perfection. Remember to subscribe. It's cheap. No. Remember to subscribe. It's free. Then remember to leave a comment. Enjoy.